Leadership is not about having all the answers, it's about asking the right questions. These are the words from our guest today, Wanda Wallace, and what she's getting at is the shift in paradigm that's gone on in the leadership space. In that no longer are leaders expected or even required to have all the answers, but rather it is the time for leaders to have the humility to acknowledge that they don't know everything and that they still are required to guide and facilitate the growth and success of their teams. And truly, that's what we're getting at in today's episode between Wanda and I. And today's guest, Wanda, it's a little bit different. She's a bit different guest than the ones we've had here on the show in the past. And she is a doctor, but she's actually a psychologist. And in her book, You Can't Know It All, which is basically the premise of the episode today, she's looking at it and taking it from a psychologist's point of view, which is a different perspective than what we get normally. Normally we get leadership experts, leadership gurus, people who've had wealth of experience. But today you have someone from the academic side per se, in that looking at how the leadership space is changing to the point where you can't know it all, nor should you expect to know it all. So, super interesting episode. Why don't I go into all kinds of different topics, such as how leaders need to step out of their comfort zone for growth, how they need to get involved with different projects, ask questions, volunteer, why valuing suggestions and cross-functional teams are important, along with understanding the roles of everyone. And here's an interesting tidbit. We talk about imposter syndrome and how it's actually normal. And during these times, what we need to do to get over it. And I'll tell you right now, just a little side note, I've actually recently changed my day job, and I am now an instructor to 13 candidates on a course that I run on behalf of the Canadian Army, along with a load of other instructors. And yeah, that before that course kicked off, I was full of imposter syndrome. Guess what? It happens to all of us. That's right. It happens to all of us, me included. So this is super beneficial. And out of this episode today, you're going to take away some just awesome tidbits, actual items that is going to enable you to just integrate with your team better, to show them that you don't believe you know it all, but rather you are able to look past your ego and believe in them, which is actually going to unlock your potential. You see, our ego is what holds us back. It holds us back because we believe we know it all. But the reality is, the more you know, the more you realize how little you actually do know. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, why don't you sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation today with Wanda Wallace. Welcome one, welcome all to the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast, a weekly podcast series dedicated to helping you hit peak performance across the three domains of leadership. Those being leading yourself, leading your team, and leading your organization. This podcast couples my 20 years of military experience as a senior Canadian Army officer with world-class guests to bring you the most complete podcast of leadership going. And for more, feel free to check out our website at movingforwardleadership.com. And with that, let's get to the show. Wanda, welcome to the show. So good to have you here.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation, Scott.
So our conversation is timely in that I love the title of your book, in that you can't know it all. leading in the age of deep expertise, which is interesting. So I actually started a new role. You looked at my background, so you know what I do by day, right?
Yep.
So for the listener there, by day I'm a senior Canadian Army officer, and today I started a new role as an instructor, teaching our junior officers how to become operational planners within the Army. Basically, how we go through our big planning cycle. And one of my key messages today was, "You don't know squat."
Hmm.
So very similar to, you can't know it all. So I'm interested, how did this come around? Anyway, where did this, the inspiration, the idea of, you can't know it all come from in the first place?
Yeah, it comes from years of talking to people that I coach, largely in organizations, all sorts of organizations, but many of them large corporations, global organizations, who have had great success, get fabulous performance reviews, are top rated year in and year out, and they're not getting that next step of responsibility, and they don't understand why. And they just feel like they've plateaued and nobody can explain to them what's happening. And that's the spot where I love to catch somebody and help them understand what is required to take that next step in your career, take on greater responsibilities and manage it. And the basic story is the following, Scott. So, you come into an organization, you come into your organization, and you have to acquire great expertise. Until you become an expert, nobody takes you seriously in what you're trying to do. So your junior officers have got to learn their planning. That's what they've got to figure out how to do it and get really, really good at it. Once you master that expertise, you can sit there and stay with that expertise, but that's what you will be doing day in and day out for forever. If you want to take on additional responsibilities, then you're going to have to step out of the expertise and do something else. But here's the secret. It's not that you abandon your expertise. It's you add on. And there isn't time for you to develop a whole new other area of expertise. So the question then becomes, how do you lead when you know some things, but not everything? Fundamentally, your team knows more than you know. So how do you win them over? How do you get them to follow you? How do you get stuff done? How do you know you're adding value? How do you inspire people? I mean, all of those questions now become heart and center for how you're going to be effective. And that's what the book is about. And it came from watching people struggle and struggle and struggle.
I love the premise behind it. I've been saying for a while now, leadership, we've evolved. I also say not much is new in leadership, but
True.
there is one key part that has evolved over time, and that is in the past. And I'm talking the past. The key leaders out there were the ones who were seen to have all the answers,
Right.
all the right answers. Right? That's why people, well, not put as kings, but got selected to lead tribes, lead groups, whatever, because they had the answers or the key decision making abilities. Now I say we've evolved in that it's no longer about the answers; it's about the questions, asking the right questions. Because you hit the nail on the head there. Is that the sum of our team is way smarter than what we are now. So, go ahead.
Yeah, if you think about any of the problems a leader is trying to solve today, there will be different pieces of information in a dozen, 100, 1,000 places that you need to bring together. And there's no way you'll know enough to know which of those pieces to take and not take and how they all fit together. So you got to have the people there. And that's where your job as a leader is, bringing those people together. Now, that doesn't say that in the old school, we talk about generalists and general managers, and all you need is general management skill, and not today, because we're living in a knowledge economy. You got to know something, but you don't have to know it all.
Absolutely. So your premise is you become an expert, and then you step outside your comfort zone, but
Right.
you take that expertise with you along for the ride.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Right. So my next question to you is then, how does one go about, I guess, probably recognizing that they're at that stage where they're like, I need to step out here. This obviously is not working for me. I need to add in? And then the follow-on question to that is, how do they know which direction to go in
Right.
to
Right.
find the right,
Right.
new expertise, not expertise, but information,
All right.
knowledge.
So if you're frustrated and you're watching people get ahead of you in a corporation, that's typically you're getting a promotion, that they're getting a promotion that you think you deserve, or you're watching your boss come and a new person come in and you're just sitting there in the same role doing, and not getting the opportunity to step up. That's a good clue that maybe you need to step out of your comfort zone. Or if you're getting bored, it's a clue that you need to step out of your comfort zone. Or if you want to start to expand your network and people who know you and the kind of impact you have, then you got to broaden your exposure. And doing that means getting out of your comfort zone. But how you get out of the comfort zone is not leave your current role and your current job. You hang on to your current role and your current job because that's your calling card. What you're looking for are things to add on. So I'm looking for a project to add on, an additional assignment to add on, an opportunity to influence something, a charitable thing I'm going to be part of to add on. I'm looking for an add-on that takes me away from my expertise and forces me to lead when I don't have all the answers. And that's your way of showing to the organization, then I can do more. Because if you can do that well, then we're going to start to give you more responsibility and more responsibility and more responsibility. That's where it comes from. If you're the kind of person that's got to know absolutely everything about everything in order to be confident, comfortable leading, you're going to struggle.
You're going to burn out.
Yes.
To be honestly blunt, because one, you're going to burn yourself out, and two, you're going to burn your team out because you're just going to be so demanding on them, constantly asking for additional information. And they're going to be providing this to you, but at the same time, they're going to be trying to get stuff done in a day-to-day basis to the point where they're going to get frustrated and burnt out themselves. So
that's right.
Yeah.
And you become a roadblock if that's what you're doing, which is no fun. Nobody wants to work for that, for somebody you can't satisfy and somebody who gets in the way and you can't get things progressed.
Definitely know how that feels. 100%. Let me tell you. And then, the reality is you no longer are adding value, but the reality is you're taking value away.
Yes.
So this is interesting. So, you look for those, you see what's happening around you. You notice that, wait, now people are getting promoted. They're getting these new jobs. They're getting whatever. I want some of that. Why am I not getting it? And you go, well, okay, it's time for me to take on additional responsibilities. So how does one go about finding, where to get them in the first place? Because, if I'm in operations, I don't think I should be walking down to the finance department maybe and be like, hey, got a budget report, got a TPS report I can take off your hands.
Yeah, right. But there will be projects and task forces and, sort of multifunctional areas that come together to try to solve a problem. Put your hand up and say, I want to be part of that. And yes, you're going to represent your area of expertise, but that's your opportunity to see how all these other areas work and to ask questions and to understand how your area interfaces with all those others. So, some of that volunteer work is actually a really good idea. Or you ask, how do you find this? This is where mentors become really critical. Because a mentor can help you sit back and say, well, what are your core skills, Scott? And where could I see those skills being deployed within our organization? And, who do I know that I can introduce you to so you might get involved in some of what they're doing over there? So if you're in operations, for example, one of the adjacent areas in most organizations has to do with risk or risk analysis or compliance. That's an easy place to start looking and say, again, I'm not leaving my operational job, but I'm saying, what else can I begin to get involved in that's I can add value to? And, one of the other things is most organizations have some charitable event that they organize or some big, community event that they organize. Volunteer to lead those or get involved in leading a part of that, because again, you're outside your expertise and you're showcasing your capability to lead without having to have all the information, to bring people together, get the best out of a group of people. That's what we're looking for.
I really like those suggestions, especially on the cross-functional teams. I think that is crucial because one, you get to know more people across the organization.
Absolutely.
Two, you get to understand how important their role is and how it affects the rest of the organization.
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing is that you're showing the ability to interact with other types of people, right? Finance people are different than operations people, who are
Right.
definitely different than sales. Let's say that, right?
Right.
And so on. So there's a lot of great info there. I actually had a client, very similar situation, what you've been talking about, former client of mine. And one of the things I talked to him about, I said he was trying to get the next level up. He's trying to come to the same level as his supervisor. So, okay, well, you got to show that you can think not at your boss's level, but your boss's level. In the Army, we call that two up. What's your two up's intent? So look at, not just your boss, what they're working on, but rather look at their supervisors, what they're looking on, what's important to them, where is their focus right now, and see where you might, kind of slide in and
Right.
grab a little bit of that extra responsibility.
It's absolutely true. I mean, I call that being strategic. So you're thinking not about what your boss needs immediately, but you're thinking about what your boss's boss is seeing, anticipating, worried about. And you're trying to think, what am I doing that is helping my boss's boss? And how do I communicate it to my boss's boss in the language my boss's boss would typically use? At the level of detail they want to know as well, which is usually not your own. So yes, that step 2 up is absolutely totally a good way to begin to stretch those strategic thinking skills.
That's awesome. I like that. I like the way you put it. Probably a bit more so than the way I put it, but hey, it works both ways. Trying to think that you hit on something and it's just totally slipped my mind. Oh, this is what I wanted to ask you. So, we're here, we're getting into this project. Maybe we're in a multifaceted team, multi-dimensional team or something like this. And then it hits us. The imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, what am I doing here? I don't know anything. I don't know what I'm doing. So what's your advice for the leaders out there who find themselves in that scenario? And actually, a double-faceted question, very similar. One, advice for leaders if they find themselves in their scenario where they are feeling imposter syndrome, being a part of a multidimensional team and so on. Or two, they have a person who's in this scenario and they come out and say, listen, like, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel, obviously they feel imposter syndrome, so on and so forth. And what advice should they give to their person in that situation?
Okay. I have a whole long spiel on this one. Let me do this from the person who's feeling like an imposter. Okay. When you are the expert and operating in your zone of expertise, and you know everything that is reasonable to know about your particular area, usually we don't feel like an imposter. I can go to any meeting. Anybody can ask me any question. Confidence is strong. Even if I don't know something, I know it's reasonable that I don't know it because I'm in my comfort zone. The moment you step outside of your comfort zone, outside of your expertise, your confidence is going to start to raise its head and go, wait a minute. And this is where you're going to feel like an imposter because you don't know as much as you think you probably need to know. It is 100% normal. And if you don't experience it, then you're probably too arrogant. So when you step out of your comfort zone, it's normal. And I almost don't want to use the word syndrome anymore because it's just a fact of human behavior. I'm not I don't know everything. And now I got to say, geez, I don't know everything. Now, the antidote to this is to dig into two things. One, what is it that I do know? What's my value in this situation? What's my contribution? So if you go back and you say to yourself, right, I'm not familiar with this particular data analysis that we're doing. This is outside my comfort zone. I volunteered to do this. This is what I want to learn. But what I really do know is how our operations collects data. And my contribution on this team is going to be representing that in terms of helping people understand the process that we come to getting this data. So I see what my value is. I see what my knowledge base is, and I can't know it all. So you come with your strength, with what you know and how you know it. That's how you get over the imposter syndrome. The third piece of this one is you got to get comfortable with saying, here's what I'm good at, and here's what I don't know. Authenticity, I believe, is at the end of the day a judgment that's a combination of confidence in what I do know and humility about what I don't know. Because when I'm humble and I say, gee, Scott, you've been doing this for 20 years, I don't know your area so well. I'm making you feel good. You're now going to help me. So long as I'm confident about some stuff that I bring. So those are the anecdotes to deal with the imposter syndrome. Number one, it's normal. Number two, what is it that you do know and what is your value on this team? And then number three, this balance of confidence and humility, which we all love. Okay. Now, if you're someone who's trying to coach someone through feeling like an imposter, you're going to go through exactly that same scenario. One, tell them this is normal and give them a story about a time you stepped out of your comfort zone and felt like an imposter so that it feels natural. And then number two, you're going to help them focus on what they are really good at, what they do know, and what the value is they're bringing to this cross-functional team. And as a senior person, you probably have a line of sight on that the individual doesn't. And then from there, off we go to the races, and then talk about this balance of humility and confidence and how it's okay to say, I don't know.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And I think, it's just simple. Focus on what you do know to get that confidence going. And here's the reality is you focus on that and you're in a room with a group of people who don't really understand or know what you do. You're going to look like a rock star. Like they're all going to be like, wow, oh, wow, you're so good. Right.
Yeah.
And that kind of helps diminish that. I also like the whole humility aspect of it. I think we are slowly coming out of the age where people believe it's wrong to say, I don't know, but rather it's becoming accepted, which is beneficial. I was having a conversation with a colleague and saying for far too long, organizations have been full of essentially yes men, people telling their supervisors what they believe their supervisors want to hear, vice what the reality is actually on the ground. And that goes back to saying, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I know who should know the answer, or I know where to get the answer, but it's okay
or I know
to say
some parts of the answer.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to make space for my colleague over here who actually does have some information that would be useful. I mean, that wins friends and influences people right, left, and center.
Absolutely. And I guess that would be a great way to segue into interacting with others and your advice for leaders out there who are, in this area of trying to kind of, grab a little bit more. How might they communicate and interact with others in a way that doesn't necessarily come across as negative? Because I see like that could come across like, oh, you're trying to get, you're trying to take on more responsibility. You can look at it positively, or you can look at it negatively in that, oh, you're just trying to brown-nose boss. Oh, you're trying to get that promotion, in a very negative connotation. So I'd love to get your tips on interacting with others in that realm.
So as not to come across as brown-nosing, to use your expression there. Okay. We could talk about this one for the next 5 days because there is so much in this. How do you interact with others? But there's some general principles that I think are going to work pretty well. So let's hit those and then you can ask me more details. Number one, if I've been working with you and I have never done anything nice for you, I've never done a favor, I've never chatted with you, I've never asked how your work is going, I've never tried to help you, I've never done anything nice with you. You're not going to have a good attitude about anything I do even if my intentions are really good. So, one of the starting places in all of this is you kind of got to build some credibility with people by giving a little rather than just taking or ignoring. So it's one of my first principles is what are you giving to other people before you're asking? All right. Second thing, the thing that people do all the time, especially when you're really smart and you're deep expertise in something and people say something and you cut them off and you say, no, that's not right. That's not how it goes. I know the answer, and off you go charging. Well, that leaves people feeling pretty incompetent. And if you leave people feeling pretty incompetent, I can guarantee you they're going to resist you and they're going to have a pretty bad interpretation of you and what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it. So you want to leave people feeling competent at every single turn. Even when you're giving them feedback about something they have missed, you want to leave them feeling competent. It's a tall order, but it's a really important one. The second thing is you want to leave people feeling like they matter. They're significant. They're important. And you do that in a host of ways. The chit chat, the doing favors, the showing what you value about people, naming what somebody did really well, calling it out. All of those positive attributes leave people feeling significant and important. And when they feel significant and important, they're going to have a more positive reaction to you. If they feel insignificant, they're going to get defensive and it's not going to go very well. So can I give you an example about this? I was talking to somebody earlier today who said, I have to give to somebody who has more formal authority in the organization than I do. I think that the judgment they've made about what to do is the wrong judgment, and it's having consequences I don't think they've thought through. All right. And let's assume that that's true in this moment. Okay. So going to somebody with more authority and saying, or more education, excuse me, and saying, I think there's something you missed here, is probably not going to go very well. They're probably going to say, in effect, get back in your box and do your job and leave me alone. But if you start that with saying, look, I really think that your insights on this particular problem are enormously valuable, and I've really enjoyed working with you on this. I'm going to start with a genuine compliment that I really mean, that's valuing somebody. And then I'm going to offer a piece of data. I've noticed that X is actually not working according to plan. And then your magic, Scott, use a question. I'm wondering how that resonates with your knowledge, with your wisdom, and so on. And now we can have a conversation where someone might listen to me saying, I think there's another way to do this, but I haven't made them wrong. I haven't made them incompetent, and I haven't devalued them in the process.
Do you ever feel alone, lost, or you're just not good enough as a leader? You know what? You're not alone. Many of us struggle with those feelings, especially when we're new to leadership or facing new challenges in our roles. But you don't have to go alone. It's where our Leader Growth Mastermind comes in. Our community is specifically designed for leaders who are looking to grow, develop, and most importantly, thrive. Our weekly curated content, group coaching calls, and a safe and supportive community is where you can connect with other leaders who are facing similar challenges. Whether you're dealing with imposter syndrome, feeling overwhelmed by the demands of leadership, or simply looking to connect with a community of like-minded individuals, the Leader Growth Mastermind is here to support you. So why not join us? Take that first step in becoming the leader you're meant to be. Visit lead.boss.com/mastermind to learn more and sign up and join our community today. Together, we can grow, learn, and achieve our full potential as leaders. And again, that is lead.boss.com/mastermind. withhold.com/mastermind. Can't wait to see you there. And now, back to the show. I think one of the big things there, I love that whole process, by the way. But one of the things it does is it avoids something which I absolutely despise, and that's what I call the blame game. Right?
Yes.
It's it's messed up because it's your fault. It's your fault that is, and I hate it because it serves nothing. It serves no one. In the end, it doesn't help anyone. And it definitely doesn't help fix the situation. So, I really appreciate the way you did that and that get the other person on track. But at the same time, you did it in a way that they felt psychologically safe to continue to open up.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's the secret.
That is definitely the secret for sure. It's not easy though.
No, it's a tall order. And in many days, people test your patience on all of those. And part of the job of effectively communicating with people is finding that space where you can value them, make them feel significant, make them feel competent, and even make them feel like they might be sort of liked.
Yeah, definitely sort of like it. But I would say it boils down to ultimately respect it. As long as people feel respected, they'll definitely be like, okay, it's okay. We might not necessarily like each other, get along with each other, don't want to go for drinks after work, but if there's mutual respect, you can definitely get along ways.
That's why I say sort of liked. We want to be at a place where you say, Scott's okay.
He's okay.
I'm not inviting him home for dinner, but Scott's okay. We want to get to that place. And that's where working relationships start to generate really positive results. And it's where collaboration comes. If you're trying to collaborate with people and they're not feeling significant and competent and somewhat liked and respected, you're going to struggle to get anything out of them.
Let's hit a bit on that whole collaboration aspect, because it's crucial, especially with the title of your book. You can't know it all. So what's some advice you have out there for leaders collaborating with different types? Like, some people are very difficult, let's say not authoritarian, but very, very egocentric. You have other people who are very shy, quiet, and then you have others who they listen to respond without necessarily knowing it, vice listening to understand. So I'm just curious on your perspective on collaborating with different types of people and how leaders who are trying to go a bit above and beyond can work with these types.
All right. The first thing is my mother. I'm going to quote my mother. She always said, "It takes all types." And I will say the same in any organization. You're going to find all types. You're going to find people who are very egocentric. You're going to find people who are so shy it's hard to get much out of them. You're going to find people who listen, people who don't listen, people who are talkative, people who are not talkative. I mean, it's a whole collection of types. If you're going to lead, and you're going to lead at any scale, you're going to have to get good at getting the best out of all of those different types of personalities. So it's a journey, and you start with one personality type that you're struggling with and figure out how to make it work. Now, again, we're not looking to become best friends. I'm looking to say, how do we have an effective communication? How do we have effective working? How do we build some degree of trust? Okay, so here's what I say to people about how to do that. Number one, whoever it is that you are working with, someone in the organization values them for something, or they wouldn't be there. The question is, what are they valued for? Who values them? Why they value them? If you can find that, even if it's just one thing, and show that respect for what they're valued for, you're going to find it's a whole lot easier to work with them. So that's my number one piece of advice. My number 2 piece of advice is watch your own judgments. Okay, so I have worked with several people that I find painful to work with, particularly on a client basis. Mm-hmm. And they're not, to me, they're not friendly. They sound mean. They sound angry. They sound, but when I just say they sound mean, I made a judgment. I know nothing about what's really going on for them, what the agenda is, whether they're mean, whether they're not mean. When I make that judgment, I limit my ability to interface with them. So if I can stay with, geez, that person is quick to give their point, and not make the conclusion about why or what, any of that stuff, then I've got a chance of working with them. And I swear to you, every single one of those people that I've encountered have turned out being really good clients, really big fans, somewhat of friends. But I had to get over my initial ick reaction and my judgment about that.
I really like the first bit you said there. They're there for a reason. We just got to understand what that reason is, right? Basically, see them where they're at.
They have something to offer a value. What is it? Show the respect for that one thing.
100%. I think that's probably the biggest takeaway for anyone out there right now. Wanda, it's been a great, interesting conversation for sure. However, all the good things come to an end. Before we wrap up here, I do got a couple last questions for you. The first being a question I ask all the guests here at the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast. It's according to Wanda Wallace. What makes a great leader?
Somebody who can get the best, out of the most number of people, so large numbers of people, in an efficient manner. It is always a trade-off function. I'm looking for great performance out of a broad range of people, and I can't take all day to get there. I think that's what we are looking for to judge leadership at the end of the day. But if you ask the qualities that make a great leadership, what's interesting to me is that there are many, 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 many qualities. I'm going to pick up any book, they'll list dozens of them, and I can give dozens more. I think the secret sauce for leadership is ultimately a balancing act. For any quality, if I overdo that, I'm going to have a problem. So if I'm direct and I overdo that, it's going to be a problem in some situations. And I've got to learn to both be direct and be diplomatic. I've got to keep that balance in tension. And just like the title of my book, you've got to have some expertise. But if you over rely on that expertise, you're going to have a problem. So, and like I said, with authenticity, I need to be humble and I need to be confident. Leadership is a constant journey of balancing two polar opposites and not getting stuck on one side or the other, so that you can adapt to the person, to the situation, to the need.
Love it. It's interesting to hear the first time. I think that's probably the first time someone's brought in efficiency and effectiveness into that answer. Pretty sure, but I really enjoy it, and I thoroughly enjoy the adaptiveness that you brought out, because I talk about that all the time. And I talk about that to my members. I host a mastermind community, so we have members who show up and just trying to elevate their skills. So we have weekly calls and stuff, and I often talk to them about what I refer to as my leadership spectrum. So on one side is completely laissez-faire, and the other side is complete authoritarian. I'm like, and you have to be able to maneuver across that spectrum based on the situation that is in front of you.
Yep.
Right. And I've had so many clients go, or I've been on podcasts where the host is like, so what's the best leadership style? I'm like, all of them and none of them. And they go, what? I'm like, it's all based off of the situation in front of you. You have to be able to walk in and be diplomatic and, trying to resolve some conflict. And then after that's done, walk out of that room and go into another room and fire somebody, which is complete authoritarian, because unfortunately it's going to be addition by subtraction, and that happens sometimes, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And then you have to walk into another room and be a team member. And that could all happen within the span of 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So That's why I definitely appreciate your answer. The final question of the show is, where can people find you, follow you, part of your journey? Shameless plug, all yours now.
All right. The easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn, Wanda T. Wallace. But I'm also on Instagram at Wanda T. Wallace. I'm on Twitter at Ask Wanda. I'm on Facebook at Wanda Wallace. We're on TikTok at Wanda T. Wallace. The website is leadership-forum.com. You can find me there. There's an email to send it to me. And I also have my own website, wandawallace.com. I think if you check any one of those, you should be able to pop me up.
Awesome. For listeners, always, it's easy. Just head to the show notes. You'll see the link there. It's this episode number. Basically, leaddon'tboss.com/the episode number. All right. So be sure to check them out. They're there for you. Wanda, again, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule this evening and joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation. Good conversation.
And that's a wrap for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast. But you know what you could do to truly support the podcast? And no, that's not leaving a rating and review. It's simply helping a friend. And that is helping a friend by sharing this episode with them if you think this would resonate with them and help them elevate their performance level, whether that's within themselves, their teams, or their organization. So do that. Help me, help a friend, win-win all around. And hey, you look like a great friend at the same time. So just hit that little share button on your app, and then feel free to fire this episode to anyone that you feel would benefit from it. Finally, there's always more. There's always more lessons around being the highest performing leader that you can possibly be, whether that's for yourself, your team, or your organization. So why don't you subscribe? Subscribe to the show via movingforwardleadership.com/subscribe. And until next time, lead, don't boss, and thanks for coming out. Take care now.